What's up, everyone? We're back for another episode of Locked On Bucks. A little bit of a delayed post-game pod, but Milwaukee, you talk about going on a winning streak. The Bucks are on a winning streak. Back-to-back wins. They handle the Sixers. They handle the Knicks. The champs are back. Let's talk about this Knicks game because it was interesting. There's plenty to talk about. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Bucks. I'm your host, Kane Pittman. You can see me on this show and hear me daily and also find my work over at ESPN and NBA Australia. And joining me is the founder of brewhoop.com and longtime voice of the podcast, Frank Madden. As always, we thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first listen of every single day. If you're watching us on YouTube, we've been up here. We've been doing this for about 6 weeks now. It's a different look. It's a bit of fun. If you haven't checked it out on YouTube, you can do that. And today's episode is brought to you by McDonald's, proudly serving community since 1965. McDonald's has always been more than just a place to get tasty, affordable food. It's an unofficial community center. A big thank you to our friends at McDonald's for always being there. I'm loving it. And Frank, we had a podcast, and we've been discussing this for the last couple of weeks, and just about the injury list, the injury toll, and the fact that the Bucks need to find a way just to win games. And I think that was literally the conversation we had before this back-to-back against Philadelphia and New York. They got some injury luck against Philadelphia, and it wasn't easy, but they just banked a win. And when we finished our last podcast, the post-game against Philadelphia, I said, this New York game is going to be difficult. They're playing well. This is legitimately a decent basketball team. And you said, well, at this point, with some of the guys they've got out, it can come down to three-point shooting. And can they hit three-point shots? And they did that. And on a night where Giannis only has 15 points, they're able to put up 112 and win on the road on a back-to-back when they were challenged late. This was a pretty good win, honestly, and a back-to-back given how things have gone the last couple of weeks.
It's pretty rare that the Bucks had a 24-point lead in the second half. They won by 12, and I was like shocked that they won by 12, as many as 12 points, right? Because right, a very strange game. The Bucks really begin to exert their will in that third quarter. Giannis finally has his breakthrough, 11 points in the third quarter. They get that big lead. You think they're they have this game, but as they did a couple weeks ago or a week ago, maybe even 10 days ago, the Knicks come back, and this time it's their bench. And with Julius Randle, who struggled the first few quarters, and most of the other starters on the bench in the fourth quarter for the Knicks, they mount this huge comeback. And I'm not gonna lie, when they tied the game, I was like, I don't think the Bucks are winning this game. I mean, the Garden crowd was obviously incredibly into it. And it just felt, some of the possessions the Bucks were having, they were like having like jump shots blocked. Like it just felt like they were, I don't want to say they were spooked because look, they just won an NBA championship. Like I know they're not afraid of the Knicks, but they were playing they looked like the little brothers who had, gotten out, the big brother had let them get a lead. And suddenly they were like, oh crap, like we're going to start trying now. So Derrick Rose raining threes. It was wild. So, let's just say I was still kind of shocked at the end of the game when I heard that they hit 26 threes. Oh. It was a crazy night into 7 threes in the final 5 minutes, I think the stat was. Remarkable. And, I hate to go to the that's what championship teams do. Like they just use that championship experience to, go get this win. Look, I don't think that's the exact explanation, but you look at a guy like Pat Connaughton, is Pat Connaughton nervous about playing the Knicks in November? No, not after what he's done and what he's gone through. And between Connaughton with a career night, 23 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, Grayson Allen hitting another 5 threes. Jrue Holiday was better, I would say. Bobby Portis was pretty good as well. It took a group effort, especially with Giannis struggling, but just a remarkable shooting performance. And I said it, I think a lot of these Bucks games right now, given the lack of shot making from Khris and not having Brook, it's just going to come down to a referendum on whether you hit a bunch of threes or at least you hit more threes than the other guys. And, in a game where the Knicks go 16 out of 37, 42, pretty damn good. The Bucks obviously really needed shots. And every time they needed a big shot down the stretch, they made it. And, again, they're not going to do that every night, but they've had a lot of shooting struggles early in the season. It was nice to see some of those shots going down and hopefully starting to see more of the real shooting ability of this team, hopefully start to come through. They're back up to about 36%, down from a little under 39% last year. So they're not back yet, but in a season where the whole league is struggling, it was pretty cool to see the Bucks use that 3-point shot as a weapon again.
Yeah, I had a couple of people that I know that were in Madison Square Garden, and I feel like it was the ultimate Madison Square Garden experience, because you get a Bucks win, first of all. That's important. You get a really fun game. They're banging down big shots, but you also got the insane Knicks crowd for a stretch. This crowd is absolutely bonkers. So it's always fun to be there. That's why I don't mind watching them on League Pass just when they're playing at home, because the crowd is so nuts. But when you hit 26 threes, naturally, there's going to be a fair spread of guys that knock them down, and it's kind of remarkable. They're only 3 off what they got in Miami, and I was watching the Knicks feed of this game, and I, just because I love the announcers, and Frazier was going on about that 29 threes at the start of the game, and he's like, "This is a team that can razzle and dazzle, they can hoop and scoop," and he was saying all these things, but they were just dejected at the end that this team kept on hitting threes, and Pat Connaughton was the guy. I put up the numbers just because we've spoke about it. I mean, he has legitimately become a guy that they're more than happy to go to in big moments to knock down a three. And so I was like, well, I wonder what his clutch numbers actually are shooting the ball in the fourth quarter and through last year's regular season, the postseason, and this year so far. So he's 11 for 21, so around 57. 11 for 21, around 57% there on clutch time threes, which is obviously the margin, 5 points or fewer. Under 5 minutes left to go in the game. Khris Middleton is the guy that's second, but he's a fair way back, and the efficiency isn't there. Now, clearly they're taking different shots. There's no doubt about that. I mean, let's not read too much into that. But Pat is no longer a guy, and this happened late last year. But when he shoots these shots late, I do just think that he's going to knock them down. I mean, he's really just become that guy that you trust in those big moments to hit those shots, and those 3 triples that he hit last night. Pretty damn awesome. You're on mute there. I want to let you roll, but you got to unmute yourself. I was going to lip read, but it's fine.
I mean, I was gonna say, we've talked a lot about Grayson Allen for good reason in the last week, but when you have both Grayson and Pat out there, Pat's obviously been working with, playing with Giannis now for 3 years. So he has, I think, a good cadence, good rhythm with him, has a good sense of where to be. And we saw it. I mean, there were a bunch of times last night, because obviously you're watching Giannis struggle, and Mitchell Robinson did a nice job for sure. But, Mitchell Robinson I don't know if Mitchell Robinson played in the fourth quarter. Giannis had 1 free throw in the fourth quarter. And even with, Taj Gibson being his defender for long stretches of that game, it just felt like, man, the Knicks were just flooding the paint, and there were just so many bodies that Giannis would have to go through. And, you ask, well, why does Giannis, when he's on that left block, why does he always go to the baseline, right? And you could say, well, it's because they're not putting another defender on the baseline. And yes, the baseline is another defender. I mean, you frequently hear people say that, but it doesn't slap at the ball. It can't take a charge. Ultimately, where it is, and you can use it as a reference point, and it simplifies the job that Giannis has, because he knows he basically has to get through one guy. And obviously, I mean, we've seen it, right? They can bring help if he goes under. But look, I would love it if he got to the middle more and shot maybe that baby hook, that right-handed baby hook from that left block. I mean, that's certainly a shot that we've seen at times over the last playoffs. But I mean, the way that they were packing the paint, I mean, they did a really nice job on Giannis. And I think, again, it's so important on nights like these in particular that you make teams pay by burying lots of threes when they leave your guys open. And with Grayson Allen and with Pat Connaughton, obviously the principal guys here, they certainly did that. But it was nice. Portis also, these last couple games, starting to stroke the three a little bit. Is he going to be 47% again this year? Maybe not. But it's important for him to hit threes, because, again, he takes a lot of mid-range jump shots. He doesn't go to the foul line a whole lot. So for him to be efficient, he has to be pretty good from 3-point range, and he needs to shoot a lot of threes, relatively speaking, to do that. And he's never been a high volume guy. So, with Grayson and with Pat, I mean, the volume numbers, 11 threes from Grayson Allen, 13 threes from Pat Connaughton. I mean, that's maybe the underrated part about this is not just that they can hit open shots, but that they're getting them up. They're not hesitating. And again, they're not like all wide open. You know, when the league calls something quote unquote wide open, you'd be surprised how it can be and have it still, qualify as wide open. But if they have a chance to set their feet and, they're not in danger of getting a shot block, you just feel good about those guys letting the ball go. And again, it's, Pat had gone through a little bit of slump. I mean, even after yesterday, he's only at 38%. So, huge 3-point shooting game. But hopefully we saw him at that level last year. And if he's going to be at that level again this year, obviously it's a huge plus, especially, in the short term here where you've been missing Khris Middleton and his important shooting.
Yeah, Pat said after the game when he was asked about it, it was a career high in attempts and a career high in makes. And he said, you know what, that's good that those things are together. And it's not just a career high in attempts and not the other way around. But yeah, I mean, 20, I guess that's 24 attempts between the two of them from long range is some serious shooting. I wanted to mention something about Grayson Allen as well. Just looking at his numbers across the course of his career so far. We've said it, but I think that this guy's having some fun. Before we do that, talk about betonline.ag, which is back and better than ever with a new web interface for the start of the basketball season and more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the basketball and football action this season. Head to the new updated website or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use the promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, baseball's done, but NHL, boxing, UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. That's BetOnline, where the game starts. So we mentioned at the top, we thank you guys for making Locked On Bucks your first listen of every single day. We've been pumping up the Locked On Packers podcast this week. Some unfortunate news today. I don't know. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of Packers fans online pretending now that Odell Beckham Jr. sucks anyway. He's washed. And it's like, that's like the typical sports reaction. You got to talk yourself out of how disappointed you are. But check out the Locked On Bucks podcast with Peter Bukowski. He will run through that. But Grayson Allen, you mentioned Bobby Portis. Is he going to shoot 47%? Yeah, I think we've both said maybe not. The year before it was George Hill that was up around 50%. I don't know if Grayson Allen's going to be this guy. His volume might be too high for him to keep his percentage at that point. Because if you look at the amount of threes that he's getting up this season. So he's always been, outside of his rookie season, the last 3 years, he was at 40.5% and then 39. And then this year, he's up to 42 because he's been shooting the shit out of the ball the last few weeks here. But his attempts per game, last year he was at 5.5 per game on that Memphis team. This year, he's up to 8.8 a game. He's getting up. And last night in particular, you could just see it, that as you pointed to, the way they were defending Giannis, we've seen teams load up on Giannis before. But the Knicks did do a good job, particularly in transition as well. They would always have 3 guys there, and it's like, okay, Giannis, you've literally got nowhere to go here. It's not a surprise. Tibbs, this has been a good defensive team. They were good last year. But it did allow guys like Grayson Allen and Pat Connaughton, obviously, to get off the chain. But there was 1 3 in particular early in the game where I was like, okay, Grayson Allen's really feeling good about himself right now. He dribbled the ball up the floor. We haven't seen a lot of it. He literally just pulled up, no pass on the left wing, knocked it down. And I was like, okay. Grayson Allen's, gone from a guy in the first couple of games where Giannis was angry at him for not shooting the ball to now he's just letting ping and transition 3, pull up threes in transition. So Grayson Allen, I saw someone tweet the other day that he always looks miserable on the floor. He does have a bit of a grumpy face and a grumpy look on his face most of the time. But post-game, if you ask him about Giannis and watch his post-game press conferences, he's definitely enjoying life on this team and enjoying life playing with Giannis.
Yeah, and we talked about him and the kind of outsized number of open threes that he's been getting. I think there was a stat. It was maybe like 5 games ago or something. The Bucks, they're on their open threes. They were 2nd or 3rd in the league, and they were shooting 29.9% on wide open threes, which is, just kind of a crazy, just outlierish, small sample thing. Well, you wanted a mean reversion. Here it is. The last 4 games, 26 wide open threes per game, 45.2% as a team. They've been hitting those. Obviously, last night was a big part of that. But again, the way that teams are defending Giannis, Khris Middleton's not been out on the floor, so nobody's, really worried about, a Khris Middleton. George Hill does not have the gravity of, Khris Middleton right now. And so, yeah, it just makes sense that teams are just going to be able to on Giannis, and Giannis is also not going to get the same opportunities in terms of the pick and roll game, just because I'd say Khris is probably still the best guy at getting Giannis easy looks out of pick and roll. I think Grayson Allen did actually get Giannis the ball, and I think he might have been fouled on an attempt in a roll situation last night. But yeah, I think overall, obviously, Grayson Allen has settled in extremely quickly. Pat's kind of back to where he needs to be shooting the ball, and again, I think part of what just had to happen when the Bucks were struggling was they just need to start. And last night, obviously, was hopefully a sign of the tide turning a little bit. And now I think the question is just, where do they settle in? Are they a middle of the pack 3-point percentage team, or are they going to be, a high end 3-point percentage team? I think last year they were around 20 wide open threes per game and shot, I think, percent on those wide open threes. This year, obviously, still only 36% on wide open, but they're at, I think, around 23 wide open threes per game, which leads the league. So they're creating more open looks than ever. Obviously, Giannis is a huge part of that. And nice to see the ball finally kind of starting to go down for really almost everybody. I mean, Rodney was back out there. Shemi Ojeleye continues his red hot shooting, 2 out of 3 from deep, 9 points. Also, Shemi Ojeleye had his first block in 2 years, which you might think is like a misprint, but he had 950 minutes last year, did not block a single shot, which I don't know how that's possible given that he's, 6'6", 6'7", and a good defensive player. You'd think like he would have gotten one of those like slap down guy going up, gets credited for a block, even though it was kind of more of a steal type plays. Like those often are given as blocks. So it's kind of remarkable, but just sort of shows that he just is all about positional defense. But yeah, he had a nice block on a Derrick Rose drive. Seemed maybe like the only time when it seemed like Derrick Rose didn't make a shot last night when he took one. But yeah, I mean, as you said, no shortage of guys hitting shots. George Hill, 2 out of 3. And Drew Holiday, we talked about him needing to start getting going, as a big part of the Bucks looking better offensively. And they put up a 120 offensive rating last night, which is obviously very good. Is Drew Holiday just has to play like we're gotten used to seeing Drew Holiday. Not outstanding from him. 7 out of 16, 18 points, but 4 out of 6 from 3. Didn't get to the foul line at all. Big issue for the Bucks overall. Only 9 free throw attempts last night. Drew's never been a big free throw attempt guy, but 6 assists, just 1 turnover. We've seen him have some turnover issues, in kind of key moments here since he's come back. And he was among the guys that hit some big shots in that fourth quarter when the Bucks were, desperately trying to hold off the Knicks and kind of escape New York with a win. So that Grayson 3. Giannis having to force up a highly contested wing 3 with, I think it was Taj Gibson or who was in his face, but basically as like contested and difficult a 3-point shot as Giannis hit in recent memory in the third quarter. That was probably the sign that this was going to be a very good 3-point shooting night for the Bucks. His only field goal in the first half was a 3-pointer, which maybe was probably the best indicator of just how weird and 3-point dependent this game was going to be. But yeah, just one of those nights where everything just happened to go in, and it's kind of wild to look at the points in the paint numbers. 20 points in the paint for the Bucks. Crazy. I don't have an easy way to check this. I'd be interested if they've had a lower number in any game in the Bud era, let alone a game they won. And the Knicks 30. So I mean, the Knicks weren't great either. And the Bucks actually did a very nice job on the defensive boards last night as well. 84% defensive rebound rate and almost a 30% offensive rebound rate, which is interesting. I think Nerlens Noel was hurt. I think it kind of hurt the Knicks last night because the Bucks did a much better job on the boards than certainly we saw whatever it was 10 days ago between these teams, or not even 10 days ago, a week, like less than a week ago. Yeah.
I mean, it would have been pretty remarkable if the Bucks gave up another 20-point lead to the Knicks. I mean, that's going to be pretty tough to swallow. But the Bucks got up 50 3-point attempts. We obviously spoke about the 3-point shooting a lot. You mentioned Shemi Ojeleye, and the last couple of games in particular, he's picked up some offensive rebounds. He got 2 on the one play, and naturally when you're shooting a lot of threes, you get some of those long rebounds. He picked up a couple of those on those plays. But we spoke about him at the start, and I said, look, I feel a bit bad for him because it feels like he just desperately wants to see this first shot go down. and they were talking about it on the broadcast. Lisa Byington was talking about the fact that he said, once I knock it down, I'll be fine. I just need to see one go down. Well, he wasn't wrong. I mean, he's been shooting it well since then, but you don't expect that he's going to be that guy that's going to shoot 45%. But this guy was really a good shooter from the corners last year and was left open a lot. So, if he continues to rebound, can knock down the odd three, then he's going to be a guy that could play. I remember that Rodney Hood was on the floor, even though he didn't have much of an impact because he hit that three in front of the Knicks bench there. And again, Frazier was just like, oh, and Hood is good from the corner. And I was like, Hood is good. Yeah, I'm going to think about that every time he hits a three now. I was loving that call, but I'm also loving McDonald's, Frank, the sponsor of today's episode. That's been proudly serving communities since 1965. McDonald's has always been more than just a place to get tasty, affordable food. It's a place where friends and family come to reconnect, a place where classmates can meet up for a study group. I've never had a study group in my whole entire life, but I'm sure that people do that. And they do it because they know they'll have dependable Wi-Fi. We're about to have a weekend of just a stupid amount of rain here in Melbourne, so my Wi-Fi probably won't hold up. I'm probably going to have to go to McDonald's. But win or lose, it's a place where teammates, competitors, the home team or the away team can come to recharge. It's a place where you always look forward to stopping at a long road trip and rest your legs and refuel. So head to your local McDonald's to refuel and reconnect. Did someone say Locked On Bucks watch party? I'm loving it. If you've got anything, so I'll say this first of all, Frank. The reason why we're doing this podcast late is because I'm in the middle of doing NBL, the Australian League Media Days. We're recording a little bit late here because Khris Middleton's Brisbane Bullets were dragging the chain a little bit slow to show up. So I've got to actually go and do another team's call here in a few minutes. But yesterday, for a Bucks link, Sydney Kings were in town, and Chase Buford is the head coach. So I wasn't watching this game live because I was in at the studio doing these interviews, and Chase sits down, and we'd spoken a few times since he come to Australia, but we hadn't met face to face. So he walks in, and I said, "Oh, how you doing?" And he said, "Well, I'm doing better than the Milwaukee Bucks at the moment." And this was halfway through the game, and I was thinking, I was like Hitchcock and Scully trying to cook a lasagna. I looked down the camera and I said, "Mama Magaliosa," and thinking that the Bucks were getting destroyed. And then I looked at the Bucks score, and Giannis had 15 points, and I said, "Well, this ain't good. What's going on here?" But they ended up winning. So that's my Bucks story. Chase hasn't got his ring yet. I was very disappointed that somehow I wanted him to have his ring somehow and have it on him so I could, put it on or something. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. But the point is, I don't have much time to break down this Knicks game anymore. But the Bucks do have the Celtics tomorrow. Another game where, even though the Bucks are still missing players, you try and take advantage of a team that doesn't have Jaylen Brown in the lineup struggling with a hamstring injury.
Well, the downside is now Marcus Smart can finally be unleashed because he doesn't have to watch Jaylen Brown not pass it to him. It's a winnable game, and you look at the schedule right now. You wrap up the road trip this weekend, I guess, right? And then you have a chance to go home, and you've got like the Magic twice, the Pistons. I mean, you got I think 4 or 5 game stretch that is a very opportune time to try to get fat on some of the teams that are, let's just say, not exactly title contenders. And so, if you can, to go this weekend, you have the Lakers as well. And obviously they're going to be without LeBron, presumably. So they're at a little, that's a good time to catch the Lakers as well. The Bucks, we'll see. I mean, the games this weekend will. And so I think maybe if you grab one of those, you feel perfectly fine with the road trip, right? I mean, if you get out of that road trip, I would have happily taken that when kind of going into it. Some extenuating circumstances, especially with the Philly game. But it's been interesting. They've been up and down. I was kind of higher on them than a lot of people were coming into the season. I think they have enough talent and they have enough depth this year to be good, but they've obviously been very up and down. Jason Tatum's been super up. More down than up, I would say, so far. But obviously, with this Bucks team at this point, we can't take anything for granted. And you just hope, especially now that they have the Giannis stopper back, Al Horford. We'll kind of see how things go. But yeah. And by the way, we need to. I thought when you were teeing this up, we need to give a shout out. A friend of the pod, Riley, called us out for not podcasting last night. She messaged us and was complaining about it. So Riley, here's our attempt to make up for it by having this. It's an early pod tonight. Shout out to her. But yeah, it's it'll be an interesting weekend, and again, can't get too up or down with these early season games. But I think if you're at 500 coming home for that, home stand where you can again hopefully roll off some wins, which is a bit presumptuous for a team that is 1-4 at home right now. I mean, the Bucks struggles at home have been just very bizarre. 4 losses. I think last year they lost 5 straight at one point. Adding all the injuries, and Giannis was out. They played like 1 or 2 kind of C League or C team games. But yeah, I think you want to position yourself obviously to kind of have a chance to get a fair bit north of 500 coming back at home. But and I think Khris Middleton is now officially out of quarantine, I believe. So he's got, I think, a couple days where he's gonna probably have to kind of do some team supervised rehab. I don't know if you'd call it rehab, but basically that's sort of the path for him. So I don't know if returning on Sunday is really possible. I would say it may not be impossible to come back by Sunday. My guess is we see Khris next week when they are back for the homestand. And again, all that's presuming that he's recovered fine. But I think he was officially listed as just not with the team rather than in. Is that correct? I thought I saw some reference that he's no longer technically in the protocol, which is obviously a good sign, and first and foremost for his health. But obviously, hope to get him back on the floor pretty soon, and we'll see. I mean, how quickly he ramps back up, we don't know, right? I mean, it obviously drew a while last year when he came back from COVID, but he also at that point that was pre-vaccine. So assuming Khris is actually vaccinated, you'd hope that obviously his recovery will be a little bit quicker. But again, here we go with fun, immunology, virology, bleeding into sports podcasts. So I'll probably just leave it there before I say something stupid and not well researched. If you don't know what you're talking about, you can just not talk, right? So I'm just gonna take that. I'm gonna take that opportunity to just stop talking.
I know it'll surprise people, but no, I'm not a doctor. I know you may have got that.
Are we gonna do a Locked On Packers segue here pretty soon? Plug our friend Peter Bukowski. I feel like we're treading into Packers territory, but I don't know.
I've already done that, and it's all on him. I am staying clear of all that. But do you know what the beauty of this? I mean, you bring up Khris Middleton, and I'm glad that you reminded me to bring this up. I just saw this tweet. I saw a tweet from Jim Olszewski over at the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel just before, and I think Eric tweeted the injury list as well, or the injury report. But with 2 games left and you pick up a couple of wins, and I mean, a couple of days ago we were talking about this road trip, saying, okay, well, they're going to be 1-4. Let's try not to go 0-5. So now you get a couple of wins. If you can take advantage of Boston injury depleted Boston team, and maybe you turn it into a 3-2 road trip. They don't have the Lakers back at home until Wednesday night, so it's probably no point in putting Khris on a plane to get him out to Atlanta, keep him in Milwaukee, and maybe eye off that game. A national TV game Wednesday night at Fiserv against the Lakers, which even though LeBron's not going to be there, it takes away a little bit of the intrigue with the whole Giannis LeBron stuff. They've had some obviously great games, but still the crown.
He's already got it. So there's, he doesn't need to take it.
Well,
I'm talking about Giannis has the crown now, obviously. But yeah.
Yes, obviously. And he's done the crown.
By the way, Kane, here's a little treat for people through this entire podcast. We're gonna do something for people. I was up here in my guest bedroom, which I have some posters that I need to hang up. I've got this. I bought 2 of these. I don't know how well people can see it, but it is a Giannis print by an artist at Floppy Action. Peter Ehrlich, I think is his name. He does awesome stuff. He actually did art for the Joakim Noah Bulls ceremony thing the other day. He made the art and they presented it to Joakim Noah and all. He does these awesome prints. Floppyaction.com. I've plugged him on the on my Twitter feed before, but I've got a couple of these. If people want one, subscribe to the YouTube feed and leave us a comment on this podcast. And look, I apologize. I don't have the fortitude to mail something halfway around the world. So I'll limit it to North America, which shout out to our international fans. But if we pick, we'll randomly pick somebody, and then we'll get in contact with you, and I'll go to the post office and I'll mail you one of these cool prints. So there you go. If you stuck with us through this entire podcast, it's going to be sad when like one person actually like, gets this far and then makes a comment to us. But yeah, if you listen to the audio version, find our YouTube feed, subscribe, leave us a comment in the comment section. And if you're just watching this on YouTube, awesome. And leave us a comment and we'll shoot you some cool Giannis stuff.
Yeah, I tell you who won't be doing that, Riley. She just wants to talk shit, but she won't last until the end of a 30-minute podcast. We know how it is. Before we wrap it up, I'll mention the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast. I've been talking about it for a while. You guys know about it. Josh Lloyd, fellow Aussie, he's also getting ripped off by this promotion Frank's just decided to run here, the anti-Australia promotion on Locked On Bucks. But check out the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast with Josh. He's excellent at what he does, and you can keep up to date with everything fantasy wise. Frank, should I wrangle you into some sort of post game pod? What do we think? Can we discuss this on the air?
Maybe. I'm actually getting my booster shot tomorrow at night. So I'm gonna have
could be a wild show.
Could be a wild night. We'll think about it. We'll leave that to you. Again, by the way, I feel bad. We didn't talk about the Bucks going to a matchup zone in the fourth quarter. I thought that was interesting. Kind of worked actually. Threw the Knicks off. I'm surprised they kind of went away from it and then they went back to it. Eventually they did give up some threes, and I don't know, maybe some of that goes to the matchup zone. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of funny. Like, remember when Nick Nurse was doing all that crazy stuff defensively 2 years ago in the regular season, and there was a lot of like, why can't Bud just be more like Nick Nurse, especially coming off that playoff streak? And it just feels like Bud is just like, F it, man. Like, matchup zone. Let's switch everything in the first quarter. Like I've been enjoying it. It's been fun to watch. And I think, again, we've talked about, obviously, the deeper you have to go, you're playing lineups that you'll never have to play again. But now we're actually at the point where most of these guys are going to participate in games in the playoffs, right? The guys that are playing right now, for the most part, he's kind of short in the rotation. We're not seeing really the two-way guys the last couple of games. So yeah, I think we're starting to get to the point where I think like you can actually maybe start to take some things from it, and the reps might actually start to not be hugely indicative of how good this team is or whether they win a championship, but it's at least, I think, instructive and helpful for what they may want to do kind of long-term over the course of the season. So yeah, we'll keep watching some of the Bucks playing random. Just bringing that to the defensive end too a little bit, maybe. But playing
considering Bud has loved saying just play random throughout his coaching career, it's nice to see that he's putting his words to action out on the floor these last couple of seasons. So shout out to Bud as well. He deserves it, man. He deserves to do a bit of experimentation out there. But Bucks and Celtics tomorrow, as we said, potentially a post-game pod. I don't know. Check the feed. You'll see it. You might see it. Frank might be in bed shivering or something like that. So we'll see. We'll see.
I'll tell you this: if Giannis scores like 16 points and they lose by 30, there's no way in hell I'm podcasting on a late Friday night. But hopefully, we'll see. If we have a good reason to pod, we'll pod. Let's say that. Let's leave it there.
Giannis, I'm calling it. No back-to-back quiet games. He'll be back. Frank will be back. I don't know. We'll speak to you guys soon.